Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. So, this podcast, it's probably going to be a shorter podcast because I'm going to address these questions. But first, I'm going to kind of talk about what I was planning. So, I was planning on creating a podcast and talking about the death experience. And that's one of the things I feel very passionate about is the death process because so many humans live in fear and carry around so much trauma. And when it comes to death, that is heightened to such an high level that I really just want to talk about my experience, what I know, what I've talked to Spirit about the death experience, what I've heard from other people. But as I was making it, I was my shaman actually messaged me, and my shaman is the one who did my spiritual awakening, and he is, for the best way I can describe him, is my teacher. He on earth, he is probably the closest thing I have to somebody who helps guide my path. Along with Spirit, he is a Reiki master. He has done a lot of work his entire life on the entire unseen world, is what I call it. And we started talking about that, and then he got me thinking about Jesus Christ and Christianity. And because I was involving that in my podcast about death. And he got me thinking, and then I started doing some research on my own, and that just blew up into this whole thing of did Jesus even exist that we know of, and is Christianity actually created by God or created by man? And it went down this place where I was like, this is a whole podcast in itself. And it had me even going into ancient Babylon, Sumer, Mesopotamia. It had me going into the Anunnaki, and I was like, oh my God, this is this is just like going everywhere. So I actually had posted it and I put it private, and I'm just going to delete that podcast because I think it's a much bigger story to tell than basically what I had done it on. So we're probably going to shelf that. I want to do a lot of research because what I found so far is definitely going to be triggering for any Christian that would see it. And I don't want to, not being a follower of Christianity, I don't want to create the typical biased Christianity is a fake. I want to get to the truth. I think the truth is important, whether I believe in the truth or not, or whether I believe in Christianity or not. I think the truth is what heals everyone. With that being said, I also think that something that is difficult to discuss still needs to be discussed. So I want to approach that very, very carefully and respectfully. So that's definitely going to get shelved. I wanted to make this podcast to address these questions because I think these are very obvious questions that a lot of people have. And I'm going to try to put in an additional podcast this week on what I call spiritual breathing. It's an exercise that actually helps everyone, especially with anxiety, with depression, with feeling very heavy, and just a way of getting rid of all that junk energy that we have floating within our vessel. So, but this podcast is just going to be talking about these questions. So Monkey Guard says he's wondering various things such as why do I exist and what is my purpose and or destiny. So why do we exist? Well, the best way to explain this is we are God and God is us. We are think of glitter. We are these glitter shards of God. God has created everything in the universe itself, the boundaries of the universes, I should say, because there are many universes, reality itself and everything within it. And to find God, we just look within ourselves. God is literally within us. And we exist to learn lessons and move up the evolutionary ladder. And part of that is where we exist. For the planet Earth is a very low vibrational place. And what I mean by that, it's a place that has a lot of dark energy. And that dark energy is greed, is envy, is anger, sadness, fear. Everything like that exists on this plane of existence. You see, when we quote unquote die and move on to the spiritual plane, that doesn't exist. The spiritual plane is a very high vibrational, high density place. And it's a state of love. Like that's it. You'll hear me talk about love and how love is so much more powerful than human beings realize. I've heard the quote, and I love this quote, that one person's love counteracts a million people's fear or anger. And how it does that is we're all connected. Every single human being is connected. So while people like to isolate, that's not our natural state. Our natural state is to be connected to one another. So simply, we exist to learn lessons. We learn lessons on love. We learn lessons on fear. We learn lessons on anger. We learn lessons on kindness. And it's not as simple as you get one lesson and you learn it in a lifetime. You might not learn it in that lifetime. It really depends on what you're going to do with that. And I think the follow-up question to that is, how do I know what my lesson is? Well, we really don't, but if we pay attention to the signs around us, there's a pretty good indication. You know, for me, I was molested at the age of 5 until about 10 years old by family members. And that was a very difficult thing for me to process through, because at that time, I definitely, had not gone through my awakening. And I think I even felt like this after I was recently awakened, is why would God do this to me? Well, God didn't do this to me. I chose this life. When I was in the spiritual plane, I chose this life for a specific lesson I had to learn. And I think my lesson, or at least one of my lessons, is forgiveness. Is, can I forgive people who would do that to me when I had no one else to stand up for me? Can I forgive somebody like that? And that's still something I'm working through. I've done some initial forgiveness, but that resentment is still there, and that resentment is still partially holding me back. And I'm aware of that. And it's one of those things where somebody just can't come up to you and say, well, you should just forgive this person. It doesn't work that way. That is so incredibly toxic. But this is something that each of us has to look in within ourselves and say, do we have the capacity to forgive? And if we don't, we take it with us to our next life. And it's up to that next life to say, can I forgive? And for me, as a spiritual being, and having a somewhat understanding of all of this, I'm like, well, I made it this far. Like, the first half of my life was just incredibly chaotic, incredibly traumatic, trying to just simply exist. And now I'm aware of what happened, partially of why it happened, and now I have to start doing the work. And this is what it's like for, I would say, most psychics. If they are awakened, they are aware of all of these things. And they're aware that no human being is perfect, and it's something that we are constantly working through. But the point is to make progress. I mean, progress might take 2 years, might take 5 years, might take 20 years, or a couple of lifetimes. But as long as you're making that attempt to make that progress, that's what's important. So destiny. I like this one because I think we've all been told, God has a plan for me. No, God doesn't have a plan for me. I have a plan for me. I made that plan on the spiritual plane with my spirit team, my spirit guides, archangels, my ancestors. I said, this is the plan, and they're going to plan out every little situation because of free will, because it could go down so many different routes. And so destiny is what we create. If we are somebody who suffers from depression, and I speak from personal experience, I ended up in a psych ward because of my depression. If eventually I got to the point where I was like, I'm done with this. I am so done with this. I am done of feeling this way, and I'm looking for something better. And it took therapy to get to that point. I actually had to undergo EMDR therapy for my post-traumatic stress disorder. And that was not a fun experience at all. But it was at that point where I said, it's not comfortable, and it's very scary, and I would be shaking when I was doing it, but I was determined to get better. And it was that determination that got me through it. Because it was a very scary thing, to say the least. Who was I in past lives? And how or why did that lead to my current life? Another great question. We get indications in this life of what we were previously. I'm afraid of heights. I don't know why. I get the sensation like somebody pushed me off a cliff. I don't know what happened there. One of my past lives I saw during my awakening was I was a female, and I was probably around the ages of 18 to 20. And I remember this. I remember a Volkswagen Bug, like a 1960s version of one. Keep in mind, I was born in the 80s. And I remember seeing a Volkswagen Bug, and I remember waving goodbye to my parents. And I think they looked like they were from India. And so I I remember waving goodbye, and I remember walking into the sorority house. And all of a sudden I looked up, and the entire building is just collapsing on me. And that was it. That's all I saw. Another life I did a lot more work on, and I actually think I worked through this one pretty well. I remember this one. This one was also during my awakening. I was being executed for witchcraft in Germany in the 1600s. And I remember being engulfed by flames. I remember looking down at my body. I remember the flames being warm, like a blanket providing warmth to me. I don't remember anything traumatic. But the events leading up to my awakening, I remember when I would go to sleep, I would dream about running through a forest like I was being chased. And I believe this is connected to that past life. And one night I was getting ready for bed. I lay down my head, and it felt like my brain was just bouncing up against my head. And I remember hearing this big crack. Like, it looked like my staff somebody had taken it and just busted it in two. And this lifetime was very, I'd say, louder than the other one. I was much more closely connected to this one. I think it's because this person was older when they passed away. And it wasn't until I joined a circle of mediums and we were doing exercises to exercise our abilities, and I decided to contact the bishop in charge of my execution. And he was still earthbound, and I was sensing a lot of mental health issues within him, and I just gave my forgiveness. And ever since I did that lifetime has gotten a lot quieter and really hasn't brought anything up. So I think that lifetime was trying to seek to provide that forgiveness. A lot of this is my firsthand experience. If you ever are confused, welcome to my world. I get like bits and pieces, and it's like getting one teeny tiny puzzle piece of a jigsaw puzzle, and I have to try to assemble it. So a lot of times these will naturally shift because I will get more pieces of knowledge, and I'm like, oh, that's what it was. But in this situation, I do feel like that has kind of shut the door to that and resolved the situation I was carrying on. And I was carrying on that issue for about 400 years. So, and we can go back even further than that, but I don't really want to talk too much about past lives or get into that whole conversation, but that was my experience with my own past lives. What life lessons did we learn or not? We're not aware. Usually we can see it in our own life, the lessons that we learned. Empathy, the lesson of empathy. Can we empathize with somebody? Can we feel bad when somebody is wrong or being the victim? Or do we laugh at that person and say, well, they deserved it because of this? Have we ever felt love? And that's not so much like being in love, but that could be something like your parents are in love and they're showing you what love actually is. Kindness, Does kindness come easy to us, or is it more difficult for us? So these are all things we can kind of take a look at and see. Now, if you pay attention to your environment, and by all means, ask your spirit guides for guidance on this. But you could say, what is my life lesson? Please send me a sign. And if you get a sign, you can keep asking for more signs, and they'll send you more sign after sign after sign. For instance, I love this analogy because it's exactly how spirit guides work. I was driving and we were going to eat somewhere. And it was about 20 miles from our house, my partner and I. And we pulled up to an intersection that was probably about 5 miles away, and it started detouring us. It says, go this way. And so we thought we knew better, and we'd go another way. Basically, we kept hitting roadblocks all over the place. And I was like, wait. These are all signs. What is going on here? And I actually had a conversation, and there was actually an incident at the restaurant that we were trying to get to, and my spirit guides were trying to divert me away from this place and keep me out of danger. And I think that's a really good thing. Like, if you go somewhere and you have like several signs coming at you, maybe take a step back, say, okay, maybe this is no longer a coincidence, and someone is trying to tell me something. Because I think we shrug off so many things that happen and use the word coincidence way too many times, when it's actually a sign that's coming to us and somebody's trying to tell us something. And so the reason we keep reincarnating is to learn those lessons. And we keep learning those lessons. And, I think this is that question is kind of leading into, eternal peace. And eternal peace is always there for everyone. People get there faster than other people. People get there slower than other people. Sometimes people have to go in reverse. Sometimes people will commit suicide in every single lifetime. And then they actually have to go into the healing place, because the healing place is trying to prevent that from happening. There are so many things that can happen. The best advice I can give to anyone is lead with love and kindness. If you lead with love and kindness and you make an attempt, whether or not you fail or you succeed, will eventually bring you to where you need to go. And like I said, love is the most powerful energy that exists. And so I don't think it's going to bring you to a bad place. However, recognizing things about yourself, triggers about yourself, recognizing your own traumas, working on your own traumas, they're all part of the situation. And everyone starts working on themselves at a different point in time. Don't feel pressure you have to, oh God, I have to get that done right now, because this is like the human way of thinking. Think about this in the spiritual context, that we have as much time as we want. There is no pressure for anyone to be perfect. The only thing God wants for you is love. And God gives you love. And when I say God, keep in mind, I'm not using any kind of religious perspective on that. That's a very spiritual level. That's the creator. The creator just wants you to find love, and that's it. So hopefully, Monkey Guard, I answered your questions. Let me know if you guys have other questions. I would love to kind of do these mini Q&As and answer these questions because I think they're fun. I think finding out this knowledge and sharing it with everyone is exciting for me because I just like to share that what we've been taught and what we kind of feel is is um is very different than what actually exists out there, even if we can't see it. But it's out there for everyone. Everyone was created for a purpose. You're here for a purpose. Um, don't let that stress you out. Don't put any kind of stress on yourself because of that. So, thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I will talk with you guys later.